I'm really excited to be introducing this particular session. Hamlin Grange is a huge name in this area. He's somebody I hadn't met until lunch, but I was determined to be here because I had just read so much of his work and heard a lot about him. So I'd like to introduce him to you today. Hamlin Grange is a diversity and an inclusion strategist, and he is president and co-founder of Diversity Pro Inc., a workplace diversity and inclusion consulting company based in Toronto. Hamlin is a qualified administrator of the IDI, assessing the level of intercultural competence among senior organizational leaders, managers, and frontline workers. For more than 14 years, he has worked with major private corporations, not-for-profit organizations, charities, television networks, healthcare providers, and other organizations looking for ways to meet the challenges and to reap the rewards of a culturally diverse marketplace. Hamlin believes that a deeper understanding of how culture affects human interactions is a vital prerequisite in today's fast-paced and diverse world. And he's had an outstanding award-winning career as a journalist, and he's served on a number of boards, including the Toronto Police Services Board, the YMCA of Greater Toronto, and he is a trustee of the Royal Ontario Museum. Just briefly, I'll introduce myself. My name is Janet Kranz. I've come in from the Ottawa chapter, and the reason that I'm here today is because I was responsible as chair of diversity at the Ottawa chapter for the Ottawa end of an amazing series which is called Diversity and Inclusion, and we hosted 6 events of this series that was funded by Citizenship and Immigration in Ontario. We hosted 6 events in Ottawa. There were 6 events here in Toronto. And at this session of Congress, you will find woven throughout the session some of those diversity and inclusion elements, not delivered in exactly the same way, but taking a different look at it from a different perspective. I'll just say that if you're tweeting today, please use the hashtag inclusive giving along with the hashtag AFP Congress so that we can share what we're learning with the broader community of followers. And I'll also just mention very quickly that in addition to Congress, we have developed a series of 2-page documents that provide great resources and tips and techniques and insights from the conferences I was just talking about, and that they're available to you today, along with the videos and other great materials on our website, which is afpinclusivegiving.ca. So thank you all for making a commitment to embed inclusion in your fundraising practice. And we'll continue with these discussions, and we're looking forward to developing more programs to support your efforts in the near future. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Hamlin. Thank you.
Okay, really welcome all of you. Some of you, I did send out something for all of you. I think you were registered. Some of you may have received it. It's the culture value orientation. I hope you did it, brought it with you, and we're going to talk about that as well as part of this session. But before I get started, let me reflect on something. The last time I was here at Congress was 2009, and at the time, I was the only presenter doing anything on diversity. 2009. Fast forward to today, and it's all over Congress. What happened? What happened? Did somebody suddenly wake up? Did somebody say, do it? Did somebody say, you're better? Probably a combination of all of those things, I suspect. The AFP project that I was also involved with, I was the chair of the African and Caribbean Conference, which, let me tell you, that was an interesting kind of coming together of two very different cultures. And talk about cultural differences. A lot of people think we all alike. Well, we're not. We're not. Africans, and then within Africa, you have, people say, I'm going to Africa. And I say, oh, really? What country? Because Africa is a continent. All right? It's like saying I'm going to the United States for vacation, and you don't tell them what state. You know, it's, sometimes people forget that. So culture is a very important thing for me. How many of you have done, taken diversity workshops in the past? Don't be shy. I won't tell anybody. Just let me see your hand. Diversity workshops, yeah? Okay. How many of you found that useful? Okay. And how many of you kind of found it a waste of time? Be honest. Okay? Just be honest. A waste of time. And why was it a waste of time for you? Why was it a waste of time for you?
I've been involved in disability and employment law for 30 years.
Yeah.
So I was somewhat familiar with talking.
Yeah. So you weren't learning anything new, right? Okay.
But I will today.
Oh God, no pressure. No pressure. Well, I really truly believe that we need to move beyond what we call diversity, all right? Because diversity, quite frankly, is easy. It is easy. All you need to do is get a whole bunch of different things. Give me 2.5 of that, a dash of that, 3 of those. You know, think about the workplace. The workplace says we're diverse, we're going to do diversity. So they hire 2 of those, 2.5 of that. And if they're really lucky, they get somebody who's a 3-fer. You know? And now you've done diversity. The hard part is inclusion. How do you make all of that diversity work for you, right? That's the tough part. And the reason why it's tough, and I call it the messy part of the equation, is that in order to be inclusive, you got to get dirty. You got to get yourself dirty. It means you're going to have to roll up your sleeve. You're going to have to change things, how you do things, sometimes large ways and sometimes in small ways, but you cannot do the same thing anymore. And that's why inclusion is messy. And that's why organizations go so close up to the line, it's like an edge of the cliff. They look over and they go, man, that's too deep. And they kind of back off. So you know something? Let's keep working on the diversity piece. Let's get more of the stuff. But we never really do the inclusion piece. What I want to talk about, you need to go beyond inclusion, beyond diversity, and start thinking about intercultural competence. What does that really, truly mean? Because it goes beyond race, it goes beyond ethnicity, it goes beyond gender, it goes beyond language. It's all about navigating differences. You all do fundraising. Every day you go for an ask, you're navigating. You're navigating differences in a whole bunch of different ways. So let's talk about that, okay? First thing I want to do, I want you to introduce each other. Introduce yourselves. It's really quick. It won't take long at all. All I want you to do is turn to the person beside you and tell them something about yourself. Just say, hey, tell them who you are. That's it. Go ahead. Quick. Okay, that's it. Stop. That's it. Done. Okay, you're done. Thank you. Great. So, all right. You introduce yourself? Okay. Who are you?
I'm a fundraiser, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend.
Okay.
I'm a person.
Okay. Did you tell her all that?
No.
Okay. Who are you?
Oh, thank you. That. I'm a citizen of the world.
The bit-
Yeah, Karen, and I've lived in many cultures.
You're struggling with this, aren't you? Tell me. Who are you?
Who am I?
Who are you?
Well, I'm all those things. I'm a mother, a sister, etc. And I think I'm a change maker.
You're a change maker. Interesting, interesting. How many of you told each other what you did when you introduced yourself? We define ourselves about what we do. So, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm a garbage man. Very rarely do we say, hi, so-and-so, this is who I am. This is what I am. This is who I am. This is what I believe. These are the things that make me tick. It is a longer conversation, but it requires a little bit of exposure, doesn't it? It does. So that's why I asked you, who are you? To become interculturally competent, you need to explore this notion about who you are and how that will have an impact on the people you engage with. And to be honest about that conversation with yourself. You can decide how much to reveal of yourself. Trust me, you don't have to tell everything. But I think every now and then we need to have that conversation with ourselves. As a diversity inclusion strategist, trust me, I got some blind spots, and I'm constantly working at it. And I'm always asking myself, Hamlin, who the hell are you today? Because who I am today can be very different than who I'm going to be tomorrow and who I was yesterday. All about how I interact, the influences upon me, correct? And we all know this, but we forget this stuff. So I want you to think about this. If you get anything out of this session at the end of the day, ask yourself, who are you? And ask your colleagues, who are they? Well, who are you? It has a lot to do with the culture. Interesting, you gave me a list of different things that who you are, both of you. A sister, a mother, whatever, or whatever, or whatever. Every single one of those dimensions represents a part of a culture. You don't realize it. It is a culture. And we're going to talk about culture, what it means, and what it is. We are the sum total of all of these things. That's one of the reasons why we're so complex. And also one of the reasons why we go to wars.
To be different, just to be the same as everyone, my friend. Cause you have qualities in your personality that nobody else can possess. And authenticity is the key to your greater destiny, to be your best. Cause you are more than what you see, and everything you wanna be is there in your heart. Shine, live your life, live your dreams. Your precious beauty is unique. There's never been anyone like you and never will be again. Fly, now's the time to be free. You can be anything you wanna be. There's never been anyone like you and never will be again. So shine, diamonds, rubies, or any other jewel you see will never compare. Cause you're created as an individual with your own style and flair. And it is precious the way you talk, the way you laugh, the way you walk, the way that you share. Cause you are more than one in a million. There's no one like you anywhere. So shine, live your life, live your dreams. Your precious beauty is unique. There's never been anyone like you and never will be again. Fly, now's the time to be free. You can be anything you wanna be. There's never been.
Do you like? It's kind of nice. You kind of tap your feet. It's kind of nice. Before we go further, there's only one ground rule I have in here. Okay? Only one ground rule. All the other ones that you've heard about in every other workshop or seminar, they're a given. You're going to be respectful, you're going to be open-minded, you're going to be creative, you're going to be, you've heard it all, right? What happens in a room stays in a room. You know, all of that stuff, all right? But I only really have one. Here's what I want you to do for the duration of the session, okay? That's all I need you to do. I want you to lean into your discomforts, whatever that discomfort is. Because talking about this issue for some people can be quite uncomfortable, right? Just like any other kind of change or something that may seem a little bit risky, because you're dealing with beliefs for a lot of folks, and some hard-held beliefs about certain things. So I want you to lean into discomfort, okay? Whatever that discomfort is. And so some folks, it's more than just one. It's many, okay? So I welcome you to do that, please, because I think it's the leaning in that's where the real learning begins. Okay, so can we agree on that? Thank you. Appreciate that. Another thing, and I usually say it at the beginning of any kind of session I do, are there individuals here with disability or accessibility issues I need to be aware of? I see, for example, this gentleman is using okay, so if you need to move closer, if you need me to explain what's on the screen, just put your hand up and I'll do that, okay? Okay, good. Anyone else? Any hearing disabilities? Am I loud enough? Things like that, okay? So that's important for me as well to go through. Okay. So let's get started. Let's have to figure this sucker out. Go here, there. Come on. See, I'm new to Mac, okay? So forgive me, all right? This is a whole new language for me. It really is. And I'm learning every day that I don't know everything. Why is it not doing it? Oh, well, I did. Oh, I see what's happening. Oh, I see what. Oh, I think I know what's happening here. I think I froze it, folks. No, I didn't. No. Isn't it great when a plan comes together? Oh, I'm just screwing it up. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Does culture exist in outer space? Come on. Okay, so you say no. Okay. Does culture? I'm not talking about little green men and women now, okay? I'm not. Okay. Okay, what else? Does culture exist in outer space? Huh? You say no? Huh? Yes, yeah. You're not sure, are you? Keeping it. I like that. You said, no, not sure. Not in a shake. Does culture exist in outer space? Well, it may seem a kind of a funny question, but it's a question that NASA needed to know, all right? The fact is, does culture exist in outer space? He had some questions. He had some answers. Culture. You talked about the space station. The fact is, as long as human beings are in outer space, but let's say it's also relative, isn't it? Because in the whole scheme of things, in terms of being out in outer space as human beings, except for this last sojourn on this comet, all right, human beings, bodily speaking, we've only above the Earth about maybe 1/8 of an inch in terms of the whole concept of the universe. That's how much in outer space we are. That sort of puts it in perspective, right? So we're not really sort of out there yet, all right? However, the space station, okay? You've got Americans, you've got Russians, you've got Chinese, of course, we've got Canadians, all right? And we all bring our culture with us to outer space. So does culture exist in outer space, apart from the little green men and women that we may or may not know about? Although there's some question about Area 51, but I won't go there. Culture does exist in outer space. But that creates some challenges and some opportunities as well, right? And so NASA needed to know, they had this really hard-working questions. Do cultural differences affect mission success and astronaut and ground crew behavior, and ground crew relations? And the answer was absolutely. So they hired some folks to come in to actually take a look at that. Do cultural differences have an impact on all this stuff, right? What they found was, yes, because of culture, conflicts erupted, emergencies arose, interpersonal relationships got stressed, and it affected the ability for crews to accomplish mission goals. Now, if there's one place in the universe you don't want a fight to break out, it's on a space station, right? This could be like an extinction kind of situation, right? So you need to understand cultural differences, okay? Cultural differences can create conflict, okay? And it can create stresses. And how many of you have failed in one way or another to close an ask because there was a cultural divide that couldn't be bridged? Couldn't be bridged. okay, for whatever reason. It may not have been an out-and-out shouting match, but you kind of walked away saying, geez, I wish I knew more, you know, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that, okay? Gerrit Hofstede was a Dutch researcher who's done a lot of work around dimensions of culture. And I find this quote quite interesting. It says, culture is more often a source of conflict than of synergy. And cultural differences are a nuisance at best and often a disaster. Think about all the conflicts we have in our world today. Think about it. A lot of that stuff is based on culture, right? Parts of Africa. Remember the troubles in Ireland? Culture, okay? Culture can sometimes be a disaster, okay? So, how do we define culture then? What is culture? Anybody? How would you define culture? Values, yes. What else? Habits. Mm-hmm. Beliefs. Yeah. Traditions. Good, good, yeah. So you've done your homework, yes. Culture. Location? Geography? Why would you say that?
I think that people in a certain area often care about.
Okay, but is it because they're living in a particular area? That's why they have a different culture, or is it the other way around? Both? Yeah, both. Even cross country? Well, yeah. Neighborhood to neighborhood. The beaches versus Rosedale. Some people may say they're not really that alike or not that different, right? Let's give you something really different, all right? How about South beaches, North beaches? All right? You talk to the real estate brokers, they know their differences, okay? Culture, values, beliefs, traditions, all of those things you talk about, attitudes, standards of behavior. And all of these govern the behavior. They organize individuals into groups, and it oftentimes dictates how you actually going to behave and interact with others. Culture is a very powerful thing. And if you fail to understand the importance of culture, not ethnicity, not necessarily race or language, but culture. I was born in Jamaica. I came to this country when I was about 9 years old, okay? And over all these years, from a cultural standpoint, I'm more Canadian than I am Jamaican. And God, let me tell you, I find this out every time I go home or go back home to Jamaica. That you know what? I'm not in Kansas anymore. I'm not in Toronto, and things are different here. Okay? There's a thing called the Cultural and Workplace Survey. Okay? What you do is you can actually assess how you will operate in a particular culture based on a number of questions and assessments you do. So I did this because I wanted to know, because I've done work in Europe, I've done work in the US, Canada, and parts of Africa. And so it said, okay, fine. This is my score. Now you can compare how you rate based on these certain countries. So I said, okay, I want to know, based on my score, how I would operate in Sweden, because I've done work in Sweden, the Netherlands, what was the other one? Jamaica, of course, because I was born there, I was curious about that, the US, and Canada. So I compared all that. So it came back to me, the results came back. You know, you would operate really, really well, they said, in the Netherlands. Why is that? Because of the culture. I'm really crazy. I like really clearly defined things, okay? And in the Netherlands, the Dutch culture, very organized, okay? Very much in terms of time orientation, very driven, focus-driven, very much this. In Jamaica, it's a very different perspective. Time orientation is very different. When they say soon come, they really mean it, okay? Not necessarily for everybody in Jamaica, and that's another thing you have to be careful about. You can't make generalizations just because it's that way in an organization, in a country, that everyone is the same. But within those countries, in a general rule, based on those cultural values and beliefs and traditions, and that's where Hofstede came up with collectivism, individualism. Canada is considered an individualistic country, individualism, maybe a little bit less than the United States, but in Canada, there's one part of Canada that's more collectivist than individualist. What part of Canada do you think is more collectivist than individualist? Yeah, French Canada, yeah, Quebec. And that may explain a whole bunch of things in terms of why is it that Quebec and the rest of Canada sometimes can't seem to get together. Okay? It's culture, right? It's culture. So again, another very good example of what happens when we ignore the reality of culture. Okay? Hobson talks about culture and he calls it a software. It's like a software of the mind. It's like a computer, right? Always this software, this program is running in the background. We don't even realize it's running, but it's there. And how you react and interact with individuals and circumstances is greatly influenced by the culture. And what we call visible culture, those are what we call above the waterline. Huh? These are signs, symbols, language, food, clothes, the things you see, the visible signs of culture. I love Chinese food. Chinese food, it's above the waterline. Okay? It's above the waterline. When you start getting beneath the waterline, we call it subjective culture, much more extensive, and we give very little thought to the impact this has on our behaviors. In fact, when you take a look at this in terms of the iceberg, all right? Above the waterline, you've got music, customs, art, celebration, tradition, symbols, all of those things. And down below the waterline, the things that we don't give thought about, the things that I say, who are you? This is who you are. It's the stuff below the waterline, okay? So things like concept of giving, for example, all right? That's stuff below the waterline. You need to understand that when you're going out and dealing with these various communities. What is their traditional? What's their tradition about it? How do they see giving? Why is it important? Why is it not important? Do they give in different ways from others? You need to understand that, all right? It's not just because they can sign a check for $20 million or $30 million. Thank you, Mr. Lee Chin. But at the end of the day, we need to start thinking much more deeply about this, okay? Learning styles, concept of self, rules of kinship, relationships, even the tempo of work, how you work, the role that gender play in a relationship. All that stuff is below the waterline. It's easy to forgive someone if you get insulted above the waterline. When you get insulted on those things below the waterline, it's harder to forgive. People get really upset about that because you're striking at the heart of who they are, their values, their beliefs. You follow me? Okay. You ever heard this term before? Ubuntu? You've heard of it before? Okay. When we did the conference on the African and Caribbean conference, this came up. We sort of use this as a theme in many ways, okay? Because there's a perception that these two communities, or that community, because it was sort of a thing in terms of this homogeneous community, didn't give as much. Well, the fact is, there's a tradition of giving, okay? And this concept of Ubuntu, okay, is an idea from the Southern African region, and it really truly means humanness, humanity toward others, the belief in a universal bond. And what was interesting about all of this, it has traveled across the seas, the ocean, in parts of the Caribbean and elsewhere. This rings true for a lot of people, and that's what we found in that conference, okay? Nelson Mandela, it is what we make out of what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. It lies at the heart. Again, this is below the waterline. It's down below. It's not above, it's below the waterline, culture. In essence, Ubuntu, I am because we are. It's a collective thinking as opposed to individual thinking. Okay? Culture, software of the mind, and those attitudes and those beliefs will actually inform our behaviors, how we behave. And this is what we call objective culture, of course, all right? So, architecture, the statues, the things we see, all right? Subjective cultures, things that, why people greet in one particular way as opposed to another way. Those are subjective cultures, a deeper meaning to that. There's some modern stuff like the old fist bump, a lot of people think about that, fist bump. But you remember this one? Was there a question here of ignorance, cultural misunderstanding, or something else at play? You remember this? Mr. and Mrs. Obama fist bumping. And then Fox News got all upset. They called it a terrorist bump. Remember that? The terrorist greeting. Remember that? A lot of people forget that. A host was talking about this. Said, "Oh yeah, you saw them. You know, isn't that like a terrorist kind of bump, fist bump? It's a terrorist fist bump." Yes, ma'am. It's a comedy channel. Is that a cultural thing? Fox, yeah. Well, they may be mad, but you always listen to the madmen in the marketplace. Okay. It went as far as this. This was a cover on the New Yorker. They sort of played off on this as satire, and a whole bunch of people didn't get the joke. They didn't get it, that this was satire, and people were really upset about what the New Yorker magazine did. And they had to explain, no, folks, we're just making a joke here because it was so absurd what the narrative was around this fist bump, right? So we go back to this, right? Subjective or objective culture. Was it ignorance? Was it a cultural misunderstanding or something else at play? Are you prepared to say there's something else at play? All right? You think about it, all right? But you know, understanding cultural practices can leave us a bit baffled, right? I pulled this cartoon up the other day, and it says, they're all thinking, right? So, what do I do now? When is he going to take my card, you know? When is he going to take my card? He's not taking my card. He's got his hand out, right? And this other one, you know, he seems a bit unfriendly. Whoa, he invading my personal space. And then it's like this poor guy, oh man, I'm next. What do I do now? What do I do now? Personal space is an interesting one. Let me just stand up for a minute. So what's the acceptable space in the North American context, you figure? About an arm length, right? Yeah, okay. So it's a typical, you know, you shake the hand, right? Okay. Well, in some cultures, the handshake is not a momentary thing. It's a prolonged interaction. And it's like this, and you're there, okay? And you're shaking the hands, and to the point sometimes, what will usually happen is there'll be a stroking of the back of the palm, okay? And you'll be talking, you know, how are you, and all that. There's a wonderful picture of the George Bush and the son. And there's a picture of him being greeted by an African dignitary, and it's a very uncomfortable picture of the president because it went quite on a length as the president's kind of, you know, and it went beyond just, hi, how are you? But, you know, are you okay? You all right?
Yeah.
You're good? Okay, good. Just checking, you know. I mean, I've done this a few times with people, and there's actually been a physical pushing away. He's very comfortable. He's very relaxed. His arm is he's not pushing me back. But I've had situations where I'm actually being pushed away, you know, and it's that getting out of it, you know, just can't handle it. So it's about culture as well, okay? Okay, and culture can manifest itself in so many different ways, okay? There's also the hugging, right? The kissing, the pecking, all of that stuff, right? And sometimes we can get very uncomfortable about that stuff. Thank you, good support. Thank you, really appreciate it. You've seen this before. At the end of the day, we talk about diversity, differences, and all of that, and you know that there are what we call primary dimensions, the things that we really have very little control over, despite our efforts. At the end of the day, we're all going to get older. So it's age, it's sexual orientation, mental, physical ability characteristics, whether you're disabled or not, okay? And sometimes that can be a permanent disability or sometimes a temporary disability, all right? Of course, gender, ethnicity, all right? And then we have all these other things on the outside. These are the secondary dimensions. So you can see, and you can keep building on this stuff, right? It gets even more complex than that. Look at this one. Whoa! All right? We are a sum of all our dimensions of diversity. So when people talk about, well, your diversity is not about me, it's about them, you're wrong, right? Because if you can't see yourself somewhere in that wheel, all right, you're not going to talk, all right? We're all part of this conversation. And so it's really important for us to understand, especially the work that you do, that you are indeed in the tent. You are indeed in the tent, okay? So again, you've probably seen this before, just to refresh your memory, because we talk about diversity, and sometimes we too often stop here. Okay? We need to go beyond that, okay? So, but diversity at the end of the day is just the beginning, I think. Diversity, a mix of differences, but also commonalities. But forget about the things we have in common. But that too is diversity, isn't it? We focus so much on the differences, we forget that the things we have in common. You have a lot in common in here. Think about all the things you have in common. AFP, your profession, your belief in, in philanthropy. I mean, a bunch of stuff, okay? Maybe even your educational background are quite similar, all right? But there are differences, but there are a lot of similarities as well, okay? And again, we talked about inclusion, making the mix work. But in moving beyond diversity, here's what you need to do. You need to get to be interculturally competent, and that's how you get to achieve your inclusion and your diversity goals. So I believe if you don't have this, intercultural competence, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to accomplish diversity and inclusion goals. It'll be a stop and start, okay? Oh, yeah, why is it not working? Why is it not working? You hear that a lot in organizations. We've done everything. We've done all this stuff. We hired all the right people. We've hired this. We've done that. We've done this. But you're interculturally not incompetent. I don't like to use that word. You're not as interculturally competent as you could be, all right? How interculturally competent do you think most people are? Just from 1 to 6. And 1 is little, 6 is a lot. Where do you think it would lie along that continuum? How interculturally competent do you think most people are? About 2? I hear 2, yeah? 3? Yeah. 3? Yeah. 3? Yeah. Not even a 4? Also even lower than this. But some people say it's almost like a 2.5. But most people receive no formal education or training in becoming more interculturally competent. In fact, you've never heard of it before for some folks. You hear about cultural competence, which is the difference, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. All right? But you very rarely do have training on that. You do diversity training, and that's good. And you check out the mark, you walk away and say, yeah, I'm now sensitive, I know about diversity. Good, I'm good, I'm doing good. All right? Most people tend to overestimate just how interculturally competent they are. Most people, trust me, and I've seen it. I've seen the scores. I've done hundreds of these assessments. Hundreds of these assessments, all right? And most people will overestimate, okay? What we found with some of the research that about 15% of people have deep cultural self and what we call other understanding, okay? So about 15% of folks who do these assessments are indeed interculturally competent. Not bad, but we still got a lot of work to do ahead of us, right? We still have a lot of work to do, right? Let me ask you this. Which children are the better children? If I ask you that question, all right? First, the children who, when asked by their parents to do a task, replied that they will do the task, but then do not. Or the children who reply they will not do the task asked by their parents, but then do it. Which one is a better child? What do you think? 2? So you can land on 2. Want to land on 2? So 2 is a better child. Yeah. Anything else? They'll play you, right? Yeah. Well, this is what's interesting is that the majority of people of Arab descent, they said number 1 is the best child. All right? Yeah. The majority of North Americans, they picked number 2. All right? Because in the Arab context, okay, what was the child doing? The child was showing respect. Yes, I will do it. I will do it. As long as you show respect, okay? In the North American context, the child, well, yeah, okay, well, they eventually did it. All right? It's a very different way of looking at child rearing when you think about it. All right? And that's also having some impact on children aid societies and all this other stuff. Complexities of culture, all right?
This is an awareness test.
You may have seen this before.
How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go! It's an ad. It's an ad for cyclists, paying attention to cyclists. How many people actually saw the bear the first time? It's funny how you never. And the point I'm trying to make here, you oftentimes don't pay it. You don't see a thing until you're told to pay attention to it. Right? You don't see a thing until you're told to pay attention to it. So let me go to my next. Where is it? Okay. And there. I've done that. This is just killing me here. Okay. Okay. I've got an exercise for you. I'm going to show you a picture. First, I want you to describe what you see, what you think about what you see, and how you feel about what you think. You got it? What you see, what you think, and then what you feel. Okay? Here's the picture. Can you bring the light down a bit? It's maybe a bit better.
So what I see are bikes and a woman in a flashy dress in sand and a bright blue sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
What
do you think?
Is that what I think is I don't understand the mix of the images that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. How does it make you feel?
I feel that I'm not getting the message.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Someone else. What's going on in that picture?
I kind of feel scared for her safety and the bike's safety. Like, I feel like she's a wealthy woman and there's these expensive bikes and there's neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. 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 She's a wealthy woman?
Yeah.
What brings you to that conclusion?
Her attire.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
She's in a French country.
She's in a French country? Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. What else is going on here? She's what? Huh? How do you know there's poverty in that country?
Just the general feel of.
Ah, so that's how you feel. You feel there's poverty there. How does that make you? Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, and she's got a lot of pride. I think that she's dressed up, but you know, she may be wealthy, but everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 What are your thoughts?
I see a woman who's maybe walking to where bikes are being parked.
Yeah.
I didn't see it that way, but maybe she's walking to her bike.
Yeah. Okay.
And she's overdressed and wondering how she's going to ride the bike. Like, it could be a society where that's the main mode of transportation. And that's
Yeah. A lot of things going on here. Yeah. What do you think?
I'll lead into my discomfort here and say that there's, graffiti and bikes, and she looks at a place, makes me wonder if she's rich or just working.
What kind of work do you think she's doing?
Well, I don't know. Maybe she's, if it's a rough-ended town, maybe she's a prostitute.
Ooh. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Could be. Yeah. She's what? Yeah. She'd have to bring a shorter dress. Is that what you just said? Did you just say that? Well, interesting. It was taken from the National Geographic back in 2011. And it's a young woman, a teenager in Timbuktu. She's going to school. She's not a hooker. She's not a prostitute. Okay? She's not wealthy. All right? All right? And this is all part of a campaign in Mali to reduce the illiteracy rate in that country. Okay? And as a result of that, more and more young women were enrolling in schools as a result of it. And what was interesting, the response to this picture when it came was kind of interesting. A lot of people were, conflicted about this. They were saying, what was this picture all about? And a young woman from Nairobi, she wrote in because she saw something very different from what everybody else was seeing. Okay? Here's what she said. She said, here's what this picture says to me. She says, I'm looking into a brighter future where in the actual sense I will be this elegant, financially independent woman, and I want to show the world that I'm better than how it wants to see me. That's what she saw. Right? So it goes back to how we look at things and how we perceive things, and oftentimes this is a key prerequisite for enhanced intercultural communication is heightened awareness. What are you looking at? How are you actually interpreting the information that you're getting and what you're seeing? Okay? And the values that you describe before interpreting. When I asked you, first tell me what you see, you did that. But some of you jumped right to what you think. You judged It's a common human experience. We judge. And sometimes in the absence of information, we just make up the stories. We just fill it in. It's like, yeah, I know what's going on over there. And that's when racial profiling takes place. That's when we go into a particular situation with someone in a community, whether it's for fundraising initiatives or whatever it is, we certainly make assumptions. Oh, no, those people aren't going to give. Why you say that? Well, yeah, you know. We make these assumptions, right? We make assumptions because we're humans. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's what you do with the assumptions that's important, right? That's what you do with them. So the process we use to describe and interpret and describe those situations we encounter, you really can limit our ability to understand, okay, other cultures. And it is culture-based. It is absolutely culture-based, okay? So it really comes about where the beliefs come from, right? And it happens in a nanosecond, right? So through our filters, we make certain observations, and it happens very quickly, right? You interpret them, you make assumptions, you add your subjective meanings, which some of you were doing, all right? Remember I talked about what you think, what you feel, and all of that? You start making judgments, you draw conclusions about what's happening, what the situation is, and you start making up the stories. You just fill in the blanks, all right? And you take actions based on your beliefs. Let me ask you this. Be honest. Be honest with yourselves, okay? How would this apply to the work that you do? How many times have you entered a situation where you went through this process? Okay? You made assumptions, some meaning, you judged, you concluded, you adopted a belief, and you act in a particular way. I can admit that. I do that. I've done it. We've all done it. Some of us more so than others, all right? It is human. Who are you? Sometimes I make assumptions. Sometimes I make assumptions, all right? Okay? The goal here, I think, you need to be able to integrate both commonalities and differences. Because what happens if we focus on difference? What do you think? What's the outcome, you think? What would be the outcome? Friction, yeah? Huh? What's that? Conflict, yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And sometimes, and the direct outcome of that could be fragmentation, all right? So you break it up into slots, right? So we focus on differences, so we think in terms of neighborhoods. We think in terms of particular individuals or groups, and you put them in tight little boxes. So now you have fragmentation. It's nice and tidy. We can deal with that. Those people are over there. Those people are over here. Those people are over there. Great. Fragmentation, all right? What happens if you focus on things that are just commonalities? Remember I talked about in this room, we get a lot of commonalities. Let's say we focus a lot on the commonalities. And what do you get? You focus on commonalities. Huh?
Build relationships.
But with whom do you build a relationship with? The people who are the same, just like you.
People who have commonalities with you.
That's right. But what if those people don't have the commonalities with you? They've left out.
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of commonality you're...
Well, you name it.
Part of it, though, about trying to figure out where those commonalities are, no matter how different we are from each other, because you can find
Yeah.
space that
Right. So you're going where I'm going with next, okay? Because if you focus on commonalities, what we get is conformity. So everybody's, we're all the same. We all agree, so we can all now play tag together. All right? Great. What you really want is a balanced approach. That's what you're talking about, okay? Thinking about both commonalities and differences, all right? Because that drives innovation in a very focused way. Too often we focus on one or the other, as opposed to, but what I'm suggesting is become interculturally competent. You need to have a balanced approach. Focus both on differences and commonalities. Find the things that are different about these individuals or this person, but find also the common links. It may sound simple for a lot, but you may say, well, doesn't everybody do that? Not necessarily. Not everyone does that, okay? Because it's easier for some people, to focus just on what's the differences, and that's what we call polarization, and we're going to talk about that, all right? It's easier. It's much easier for people to handle that. And it's also easier for folks to focus on what's common. Because we're all alike, we all think the same, and you're comfortable, it's called about in-group versus out-group, okay? At the end of the day, cultural competence is different from intercultural competence. Cultural competence is understanding your culture, your values within your own culture, your values, your beliefs, all of those things so well that you can actually help others to navigate very well in your culture. You follow me? You got that? Intercultural competence is different. Intercultural competence says and allows you to stand on the edge of your culture and to be that bridge with somebody else's culture, to help them across your culture. It's a gap. And so the goal for intercultural competence and an interculturally competent mindset is to be a cultural bridge. And it's this ability, this capability that I believe we all can develop and we can all learn to have to shift our cultural perspective and adapt behavior to cultural commonalities and cultural differences in authentic ways. So shift, you're back and forth, back and forth. And we do this sometimes without even realizing that we're doing it. There are often times we don't do this. We don't shift and change our behavior. We actually minimize. We minimize differences. We don't pay attention to differences because differences are challenging. Commonalities are easier to deal with, right? So intercultural competence is this capability to shift again, shift and adapt your behavior, all right? And it facilitates what we call deep cultural self-awareness. Who are you? Who am I? It's deep reflection, really thinking about that, all right? And deep understanding the experiences of people from different cultural communities, both in their perceptions, their values, their beliefs, all of those things we talked about when we talked about culture, all right? And behavioral shifting across these various cultural differences. It takes a lot of work. It takes work. Remember I talked about inclusion? How you got to roll your sleeve and you got to get dirty. It's messy. This is messy. Because it means you're going to have to do what I told you earlier to do, all right? Which is, remember, lean into your discomforts. Lean into your discomforts, okay? So, how do we get there? Well, I'm not going to give you 10 things to do. It's really funny. I get calls from folks saying that, look, could you come and talk to our managers or come and talk to our frontline workers and, can you come and do some sensitivity training? And my response is, I don't do sensitivity training. I said, really? But you do diversity training. I said, not sensitivity training. I don't do sensitivity training because you can make somebody sensitive for so long at the moment inside a session, they walk out the door, and it's gone. It's gone. There's no developmental. There's no self-reflection. You follow me? Yeah, yes. Comes back to authenticity. It also comes back, I think, to this, leaning into your discomforts. It's acknowledging that you actually don't know what you think you know. And be open to that stuff. So, how do we get there? Well, the Intercultural Development Inventory is a way to do that, okay? And it's a tool, right? It assesses how competent the individual organization is in terms of working across cultures, both teams and individuals, right? It measures intercultural competence across its developmental continuum, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute, all right? And it also focuses and identifies your primary orientation. What is that orientation that you're most likely to use when you're confronted with cultural differences and cultural commonalities? And we all have our own different orientations. We do. Okay? We all do, all right? So you get a profile, and it really can target training, it can target interventions to really accomplish some of your goals. But it's a self-reflective piece that you do. And so this is what the continuum looks like, okay? And the idea here, to become more interculturally competent, is moving from what I call a monocultural mindset, okay, towards an intercultural or global mindset. That's the goal. This is not about diversity, folks. I can't stress this enough. This is not about diversity. This is not about being sensitive. This is not about being nice to the ethnics. It's not about that. This is all about you. and you and you. It's about you individually, okay, and where you want to be in terms of how it can help you accomplish whatever goals you've set for yourself, where you need to navigate differences, okay? So, along the continuum, you have denial, where you just miss differences. And there are individuals like that. You just, you miss the differences, and that doesn't make you a bad person. I think it's really important to understand that, okay? It doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you're more apt to see the more observable aspects of culture. Remember the iceberg, right? So people who are in denial as far as along this continuum, right? I love Chinese food. I love Chinese food, okay? Oh man, I just love that reggae music. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever that is, okay? I love saris, I love this, I really like that. But there's no understanding of what it means, the deeper meaning behind those symbols. You follow me? Doesn't make them a bad person, they're just more apt to see the more visible signs of cultural differences and cultural commonalities, right? In polarization is where you're judging now. You're judging differences. Them versus us. Huh? I would say that this world seemed to be in what I call polarization. Okay? Ever since 9/11, that number that keeps etched in our brain, the towers fell, the world has been polarization. Them versus us. George Bush said it, you're either with us or Guinness. Polarization, right? And individuals can sometimes look to polarization, that they will judge differences, as opposed to even just minimizing the differences, they're judging, and sometimes very harshly. And in polarization, there are actually aspects where you can be in reversal, where you actually start be so enamored and supportive of the new culture that you've adopted. It happens when people do missionary work. Okay? They go overseas, and we see that they've done a lot of research with students who go overseas on international exchanges, and they go and they spend time with different families in the third world or wherever, and boy, they come back and they're so critical about their own culture. They've adopted the new culture, holus bolus, man, but they don't understand why. All they know is that, boy, we're just a bunch of energy hogs, and we're this, we're that. And those people, oh, they're so back to nature. They'll live off the land. Yeah, that's their existence. You don't understand it, right? And so that's how it plays out. Right? Minimization, you de-emphasize difference. And it also plays out here in minimization, depending if you see yourself as being part of a dominant culture or a non-dominant culture within a culture, in a cultural milieu, you'll actually minimize differences, even your own differences, in order to go along, to get along. And it happens with individuals who are minorities in organizations, right? Whether you're a woman, right, or someone from a religious minority, or a cultural or racial minority. You'll minimize your own differences in order to get along. That's minimization, right? Acceptance is where you deeply understand the differences. You recognize the fact that, something? My worldview, my cultural viewpoint, my worldview is no more better than somebody else's. You don't have to adopt it. You may not even believe in what the other person's perceptions are, but at least you're acknowledging it. That's a hard step for some folks. For some folks, that's really leading to discomforts, especially dealing with different cultural groups that may have cultural practices that we just do not absolutely agree with. That's a hard sell, baby, okay? You don't have to adopt it. Acknowledge it. That's all it's saying, and acceptance. And adaptation is where we start bridging. The transitional point in all of this is the minimization. So how does this play out in organizations? So this is just an individual perspective, from an individual standpoint. From an organizational standpoint, organizations can also fall along this continuum. Organizations can be in denial. They can polarize. Think about your own organization in terms of what you do. Think about what you do, your policies, your practices. Are you minimizing differences? Or are you shifting your perspective and changing your behavior appropriately when you are confronted with cultural differences in the work that you do as an organization? Ask yourself that question. It's a hard-working question. A lot of organizations really have to struggle with that. They think that, remember I said that people overestimate their level of intercultural competence? So do organizations. So do organizations. So this is what it looks like from an organizational standpoint. Organizations that are in denial, they basically ignore differences. You know something? It's not important. Not important, okay? Judging differences during polarization, very uncomfortable with differences. Very uncomfortable. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. This is going to be disruptive. We shouldn't be doing this. We can be very nervous about this, okay? In minimization, it's simply not heard. You don't even talk about the differences. It's all about conforming. Remember I talked about conformity versus fragmentation? That's all that's about. An organization that's an acceptance, you understand the differences. Again, they don't necessarily have to adopt, but at the end of the day, at least there's a bridging that begins to take place in an organization that's an acceptance, and ultimately, obviously, when differences and commonalities are valued and fully understood, that's when you are in adaptation as an organization. Very few organizations are in adaptation. An acceptable level for an organization to be in is an acceptance. It's a reasonable expectation for an organization to be in acceptance. An organization that's in denial, polarization, or even minimizing differences is an organization that's struggling with diversity. And there'll be a feeling of 2 steps forward and like 5 steps back. You're constantly, we just can't seem to get it right. We just can't seem to get it right. We did this last week. Oh, crap, we got to go back again. We got to go back again. And you see this on and on and on again. Okay? And these are some of the orientations, all right, as I talked about. Acceptance, adaptation, in the sense that one's own cultural patterns are not more central to reality than any other culture. Cultural differences need to be understood relative to one another. Right? In organizations and minimization, policies and procedures exist. We all have policies and procedures in organizations to deal with. We have anti-discrimination policies. We've got workplace harassment policies, right? We got policies. Great, terrific. But you're looking for universal values and behaviors. That's what policies are about. You shall all act this way, and then we'll all be safe. And we know the difference between fairness, right? The difference between being equal and being equitable. It's a big difference, isn't it? Right? Treat everybody equally. Is that fair for everybody? I'm going to treat everybody equally in this room. Everybody be treated equally. But what if there's somebody in this room who is hard of hearing or deaf and cannot lip read? That person is at a disadvantage, right? But if I'm going to treat everybody equitably, it's different. I'm taking into account your individual differences, and I time as best as I can to accommodate for those differences. That's equity. That's the big difference. A lot of times people confuse those things, okay? And so what we have at times in organizations and in the interaction that you have with people is what we call cultural intersections, right? Where national cultures, personal cultures, and corporate cultures come together. And the sweet spot's right there. And this is where problems begin, right there, when they all intersect. And that's where you need to navigate. That's the part you need to navigate. If you can understand that intersection, because we all bring our own things. The personal culture, I asked you, who are you? That's there, right there. Who are you? Okay? So let's talk about culture value orientations, okay? You have all your things there with you. We're going to do that. Just be very quick. Some of you did it, right? The importance of understanding your own cultural, your orientation in terms of how you are dealing with or navigate around differences in terms of your own interaction is really to understand the worldview of people from other cultures, at least a self-understanding and reflection, cultural self-awareness. It also helps us to understand and compare how we are to people with differing cultural backgrounds than we are. Okay? So some of you, does anybody have your scores with you? You have yours? Okay. You don't have to share. You don't have to share unless you want to, all right? But in the cultural orientation, you have high context versus low context, okay? All right? So some individuals, and it also applies to culture and different cultures, different countries, but it also operates on an individual level as well, okay? So high context, very direct, very implicit, all right? Very direct, low context. So if you're the kind of person that, it's like straight ahead, give me the facts, nothing but the facts, all right? You're probably over to there, all right? And then the hierarchical, some people are just very comfortable in hierarchical settings, all right? Very much, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, salute, that kind of thing. Some people are much more comfortable in egalitarian, where you sort of level playing field. It's a very different kind of relationship. Some individuals are really concerned about the group first, very collectivist versus individual first. And you'll fall along that different ways. Some people will be here, some will be there, right? The relationship versus task orientation. Relationship is that they just have alliances. It's about developing friendships, networking. But there's some individuals who just don't really care about that stuff. I just want the job done. You don't have to be my friend. Just get the job done, all right? And then some individuals who are they're just multitasking. They'll do everything. They're just all over the place, all right? And then others are just very single focused in terms of what they're doing, very laser sharp. There's harmony, disagreement is handled indirectly or not at all. In some cultures, for example, in the Brazilian culture, for example, performance feedback is very different from the North American culture. The North American culture, oftentimes they'll tell you, right? Performance review, you know what? You really suck. We're pretty direct in the North American context. Maybe not as direct as what I just said, but we're pretty direct. In some cultures, it's not as direct, okay? They'll kind of say things back and forth, but you know the meaning because you're in the culture. You follow me? You know exactly what's going on, okay? So think about where you stand, where you fit on that, okay? And ask yourself, what did you learn about yourself? Any surprises at all? In the score that you got, did you find, were you surprised at all by anything?
Yeah, I guess the one thing was I think of myself as a multitasker, but I have a much higher score on single focus.
Single focus. Okay, how true is that? I'm just curious. When you think about it.
I don't know, I'm quite organized and time-driven, but
Yeah.
I like to do
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Look, this is not a scientific thing. This is just a fun thing to do. Okay, there are other ways to really narrow down in terms of exactly how your orientation is.
It did make me think about things like, culturally, for example, if I like things to start on time, somebody else's culture is not so time.
Exactly.
Maybe not, I might take that as an affront, but it's not necessarily.
Exactly. And adjust accordingly. And understand. Some work I did with the Diabetes Association years ago, okay? I went out east and did some work with them. And one of their biggest challenges was working with the Aboriginal community. They couldn't understand it. So we have all these meetings, we set it up, and then they show up really, really, really late. Or they don't show up at all. What should we do? I said, well, just a good one. What do you do? Well, maybe you ought to ask them what works for them. And once that conversation took place, you know something? Well, they may not show up right at 7:15 or 7:19, okay? And in some cultures, in the Hopi culture, the Native American culture, their belief is that the meeting starts when I get there. That blows our mind, doesn't it? The meeting starts when I get there. And they'll simply catch up as to how things have been going while I've been away. So when is the meeting going to start? I don't know, when I get there. That's really hard for us to deal with, okay? So it's important for you to know what your orientation is because it may help you in terms of how you interact with others, okay? Why it's important, obviously, team dynamics and all of that. Quick thing about mind bugs, and then I'll let you go. You know what mind bugs are? Mind bugs are these things that get in the way, all right? Okay? It gets in the way of our, it's these tricks of the mind, biases, implicit biases, unconscious biases. If I tell you that those two tabletops were the exact dimensions, you think I'm smoking something, right? But actually they are, okay? Okay? They're identical, okay? And you see these tricks of these, it tricks the brain, all right? So that star, the triangle doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, okay? Here's another one. The horizontal lines, they're actually perfectly straight. Okay? Okay, focus on the cross in the center. Really, really take a look at it. You see the green dot? Now, if you really keep focusing even further, harder and harder, eventually the dot will just disappear if you do it right. It just messes your head, okay? So these bugs can have what I call, well, the first impressions can have an impact on how we interact with individuals, okay? All right? So let me ask one last video, and I'm going to ask you this question, okay? Overriding unconscious bias, be motivated to control bias, be aware of the potential for bias, obviously, and take time to consider individual characteristics and avoid those stereotypical evaluations that we sometimes are prone to do, okay? So you think you're independent thinkers? Let's see how independent you are. Here's a little quick exercise for you to go out the door, okay? Think of a number, 1 to 10, real quick. Some of you have done this before, maybe. All right? Multiply the number by 9. Your fundraisers, you can do the numbers in your head. If the number is a 2-digit number, add them together. Now subtract 5, take away 5 from that number. Determine which letter in the alphabet corresponds to the number that you've just had. So if it's 1, it's an A, 2 is a B, 3, C, right? You got it? You got to know your alphabet to do this, all right? And think of a country that starts with that letter. Got it? Got it? Yeah, I'm zoning in, yeah. Remember the last letter of the name of the country. Got the last letter? Assuming you spelled it right, all right? Think of the name of an animal that starts with a letter, all right? You got it? You got it? Okay. Remember the last letter of the name of the animal, right? You got it? Think of the name of a fruit that starts with that letter. You got it? Are we clear? Okay. Anybody got that? You got it? You got it? A kangaroo eating oranges in Denmark? Some of you would have gotten a Kahlua eating an apple. Thank you all so much. I hope you've had some aha moments. You've been terrific. But I covered a lot of ground in a short space of time. I really appreciate it. And thank you. And I know I talked about the IDI, and I'm offering a special deal for anybody who wants to do the IDI, the assessment. So there's a sheet up here. You can take a flyer, take it back with you, talk to your folks, and go on my website. You can check it out to see if you're interested. So this is a flyer. You can help yourself to that, and it's a great bargain. Thanks again.